Our mini series will be called The Owner's Game Plan. The goal will be a variety of episodes and segments, which will all dive down into specific topics under the umbrella of the importance for business owner exit succession planning. So as we kick this off, we'll have a variety of different episodes, but here one of our initial segments that we have in my mind, who better to interview, Chris, than you yourself with your experience both in this market and in business. Thank you for being my guest on one of these first segments, and I look forward to asking you a few questions today.
Well, listen, Ben, people who have the most experience also have the most failures, and that's where you pick a lot of. So you picked the right guy, okay?
Yeah, well, there you go.
Okay.
There you go. No, your successes speak for themselves, Chris, and we're happy to have you on. Do you mind if I fire through a couple questions to kick us off here?
Let's do it.
All right, great. So now that you've heard the topic and you're familiar with what we're going to be talking about, where was the business community regarding this issue and concept if we look back earlier in your career?
Yeah,
Maybe the 1980s or so.
it's kind of interesting because I equate the way business has kind of prepared itself for these topics to a young man growing up. When you're 18 to 25, you're bulletproof. You're never going to die. Nothing is ever going to change. You're going to skyrocket, et cetera, et cetera. So planning out of the question, headlong. Then 35 to whatever, you're working in the business in those days more than you're working on your business. So the long range plans kind of wait in the back. Now, there was a time when they were saying, hey, you got to have a business plan. And what happened to 90% of the business plans? They drew them up and they put them on a shelf. They didn't
Yeah.
revisit them, so market changes were not involved in that. They forgot their way in many cases. So today now, and you said it yourself, and I'm a firm believer that when you start your business, you got to start giving thought to how you're going to exit your business.
Yeah.
And it used to be, well, I've got two sons, I'll give it to them. That's not always a gift. We found that out with failures
Hmm.
over the years, and especially a third generation, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that come into play, and of course a realistic valuation of your business
Hmm.
that you're going to
Hmm.
talk about.
Hmm.
Business owners remember the sweat equity, and they always think it's worth a whole lot more than it is, and the buyer is pretty sure it's worth a whole lot less than it's worth. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that come into play, but it's been a very sophisticated learning curve, and especially for small businesses because big
Yeah.
businesses kind of had this going in the 80s.
Yeah. That's great perspective, Chris. And you said a lot of things through that we'll dive into in individual segments as we move through this mini series. So what changes have you seen in this issue over the years?
Yeah, well, again, and especially remember, I'm in the small business sector basically,
Right.
which includes some pretty good sized businesses,
Yeah.
but I think it's become much more sophisticated there, out of necessity. Some of you will recall, a few of you, or maybe you'll recall your grandparents talking about it. A guy named Collins wrote a book called Built to Last, and it had a real impact on me. And if you build a company to last, that means you're building a company that will outlive you. And that means quality, and a lot of those things have to be built into that timeliness, reappraisals, market conditions change, etc., all those things. So in this day and age, I think we pay a whole lot more attention to that, so that you have more than a hobby to move out of.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. So we talked about where did you see things back in the 80s? How has the issue changed? What about today? Where do you think things are going and trending toward?
Well, I think absolutely that more and more people are starting their business with the thought of moving out. And especially in the tech areas, most of the businesses in the tech areas actually start with the thought of being sold or going public. They're building for a big payday, right? So there's planning from day one there. But I think a lot more businesses, and I think we're trending to even more. And especially as they have experts like you out there kind of guiding them through the whole process.
So with that, Chris, nobody has their pulse in the business community better than you do. Do you believe that owners are focused closely enough on this topic today?
I really do not. They are focused more closely, but they're not accurate in a lot of that focus and where it goes. And I thank you for having me on, Ben. I really appreciate it. This is good. I'm
Absolutely.
really looking forward to your mini series.
All right, great, Chris. Well, I appreciate you being on, and thank you everyone for watching. This has been the Owner's Game Plan with your host, Ben Bakken. Thanks for watching on the Michigan Business Network.